Hello dear friends, we have thought of making a series of lectures on English literature and on the literary history of English. Hope that this would help the students offering English major in their undergraduate courses. We also hope to make a series of videos on the syllabus of ACES course so that we can help the students pursuing their ACES course also. So we will begin with the history of English literature, and so to say, the history of English literature had started with the Norman Conquest, which is taken place in 1066 AD. So this there was a battle between the Normans and the Saxons. So at that time, Saxons were the ruling class at over England, and these Norman people have attacked them and had conquered this land, this England. So the battle was fought in 1066 between the Norman king William the Conqueror and the Saxon king King Harold, and the battle was fought in Hastings. In this battle, the Saxons were defeated by the Norman, and thus the Norman became the new rulers of England. And these Norman people were actually from France. So when these Norman people come to England and settled there, they also have brought with them the culture of France and also the language of France, that is French. So the Norman people have also brought some other things with them, like the idea of nationality. And after the battle was over and the Norman people were established as the new ruler of England, so many things were changed, like the French became the official language because the rulers were the French people. So there was a new set of rulers for the English people, and thus, because the Normans were the French people and their language was French, so the official language became the French. So French was now the official language, and Latin was the language of the clergy, and English was only the language of the laymen and was not given any importance in the official works. And another important thing of this phenomenon is that the Norman had no great love for their old home, that is France. that is France, that the Normans people did not love their homeland, and they have gradually developed a love for the new land they have conquered, and they started regarding England as their homeland, and this sense of nationality had brought these Saxons and the Normans together, and this had in turn sprouted a great literature. So it is said that William found England a feudal land ruled by the native aristocracy and ordered by a rich and influential Charles. But when he died in 1087, he left a new kind of feudal system in England, which was reinforced by a powerful Norman aristocracy, and now the Charles has lost their importance in the ruling process. But one more important thing is that no English king at this period, this Norman period, or so to say the medieval period, that is from 1066 to 1350, in this period no English king would speak English language as their first language. As we have already said that French was the official language, means that the kings would use French as their language. So now going to the literature of the period, literature during this period was in the hands of the clergy and the nobles. The common people had scarcely any access to literature. They have access to literature only through the ballads, because it was the ballads, and it was only the ballads which were in English language, and the other written form of literatures, mainly the long narratives in verse, or so to say the romances, were in Latin and French language. Another important thing is that the copies of literary pieces were really less. Only a single manuscript would be there in a whole village, or maybe in a castle. So there were metrical verses, as I have already said, or romances of French, Celtic and English heroes like the Roland, Arthur and Tristram and Venice and Hampton. There are stories of Alexander, the Greek Romans, etc. There is also a collection of Oriental tales called the Seven Wise Masters. William J. Long notes that the literature of the age simply is, it is medieval in spirit and French in style and expression, and this sums up the age as a whole. There were mainly two type of literary genres like the rhyming chronicle or the verse history and the metrical romances, and a few writers whose work has a special significance. There were not so many writers, but only a few were there, and the French literature of the Norman period is interesting chiefly because of the avidity with which these foreign writers seized upon the native legends or the native subjects and have made them popular in England. Metrical romances dealt with the themes of love, chivalry, religion, and these things were pervaded by the spirit of romance. Though the metrical romances varied much in form and subject, the general type remains same, that is a long rambling poem or series of poems treating of love or knightly adventure or both. So in the enormous numbers of verse romances, we can find only three main divisions according to subject or subject matter. These are the Metre of France, Metre of Rome, and Metre of Britain. In the Metre of France, what we see is that it deals largely with the exploits of Charlemagne and his peers, and the chief of this Carlovingian cycles is the Chanson de Roland, the national epic which celebrates the heroism of Roland in his last fight against the Saracens at Roncesvalles. The Metre of Rome consisted largely of tales from Greek and Roman sources, and the two great cycles of these romances deal with the deeds of Alexander, with whom the Britons thought that they have a historic connection, and the other is that the tales from Oriental sources. And in the exuberant imagination of the latter, we see the influence which the Saracens and is still revealed in the Arabian Nights had begun to exercise on the literature of Europe. The Metre of Britain was the most interesting to the English people of all the romances, because this dealt with the exploits of Arthur and his Knights of the Round Table, and this is the richest storehouse of romance which the English literature has ever found. There were many cycles of Arthurian romances, the chief of which are those of Gawain, Lancelot, Merlin, the quest of the Holy Grail, and the death of Arthur. The most interesting of all the Arthurian romances are those of the Gawain cycle and of those the story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight is the best worth reading because of so many reasons. Firstly, though the material is taken from French sources, the English workmanship is the finest of our early romances. Secondly, the unknown author of this romance is probably the writer of the Pearl also, and this is the greatest poet of the Norman period. Thirdly, the poem itself, with its dramatic interest, its vivid descriptions, and its moral purity, is one of the most delightful old romances in any language that can be found in the world. Talking about Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, in form it is an interesting combination of French and Saxon elements. It is written in an elaborate stanza combining meter and alliteration. At the end of each stanza, there is a rhymed refrain called by the French tail rhyme. So this was about the romances and the chief Metre of Britain romance, the Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Now let's talk about the Pearl, the finest example of romance. The Pearl is found in the same manuscript as that of the Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. We find three other remarkable poems written about 1350 and known to us in order as the Pearl, the Cleanness, and Patience. The Patience is a paraphrase of the book of Jonah. Cleanness, on the other hand, moralizes on the basis of the Bible, or on the basis of the biblical stories. But the Pearl is an intensely human and realistic picture of a father's grief for his little daughter Margaret. It is the saddest of all our early poems. Now, after the romances, we can forward to the most interesting thing as seemed to the English people during the time, and this is the ballads. While most of the literature of the time was a copy of the French and was intended only for the upper classes, there were some singers also who made ballads for the common people, and these, next to the metrical romances, are the most interesting and significant of all the works of Norman period. On account of its obscure origin and its oral transmission, the ballad is always the most difficult of literary subjects, but was the most interesting subject also during that time. Ballads were produced continually in England from the Anglo-Saxon times until the 17th century. For centuries, they were the only popular literature for the English people. It is in the ballads alone that one is able to understand the common people, because it is the form that had portrayed the fates and fevers of the common people. This song speaks the heart of the English folk. Yes, there is lawlessness in the ballads, but this seems justified by the oppression of the times and by the barbarous severity of the game of laws. This literature is all about but a dream expressed, and this Robin Hood is the dream of an ignorant and oppressed but essentially noble people struggling and determined to be free. We also find a few of the lyrics too in the period, like the Livron of Thomas the Hales, etc. So this is all about this Anglo-Norman period or the medieval English period that started in 1066 with the Battle of Hastings and the Normans becoming the new ruler of England. So this is it.